Money FM 89.3, best of weekends.
Yihan Sim is the author of Fear of the Guest, and S.J. Huang, author of the new Singapore horror collection, joining us now on this Halloween on Money FM Weekend Mornings. Good morning to you both.
Good morning, guys.
Good morning. Good morning, Neil. Good morning, Glenn. How are you?
Good.
Good. And Yihan Sim with your wonderful Minnie Mouse headset. If you're not listening, if you're not watching on Facebook Live out there, do tune in because we have two wonderful authors, S.J. Huang and Yihan Sim, who I believe is logging on now. We're going to talk about horror. What is it about horror books? Why do we like to be scared? S.J. Huang, author of the new Singapore horror collection. Maybe you can go first. Why do we like to be scared?
Well, to me, I think it's really no different from the other genres. Catharsis, I think, at the end of the day. You build up the suspense, as with, a thriller, for example. It's really not that different. And at the end of it, you just feel like, whew, that was quite a ride. And yeah, I think that's horror for you.
I mean, this is the thing I've never understood, S.J. Huang, and that is, I'm the guy, I don't watch horror movies, okay, because I don't understand the point of spending $15, $20 to be terrified. And yet it's that roller coaster thrill, it's that visceral step into the unknown. What is it psychologically that since the young age, we just like to be scared, we like to be terrified, we like to walk on the wild side, we like to dress up and scare other people. What is it about a human psyche that makes us read your books, pay to be scared?
Well, I heard this from another author, and I think it's really quite true. One thing about horror is, you scare yourself because at the end of the day, you feel that you're grateful that, your life isn't just as bad as what you've just read or what you just watched. Now, I don't know if that applies to everyone, but to me, I think, at the end of it, I just feel like, oh God, bad as my life is, at least it's not that. I don't face up to monsters like that or, put up with ghosts like that. And that to me could be part of the reason. Although, of course, who knows what it is for other people. Yeah.
Very interesting. Let's turn now to Yihan Sim, author of Fear of the Guest. With ritual offerings and ghost storytelling at an all-time low, the ancient spirits of Singapore come together to form the grassroots committee of ghosts and monsters. Wow, what a great storyline that is, Yihan.
Good morning, everyone. Sorry, I was having a bit of a technical issues earlier, so I missed a bit of what was discussed, but just want to say a very good morning to everyone. Great to see all of you. Yeah. So you were asking why do we like to be scared, right?
Yeah, why do we take our time and pay our money and everything else to bring up those primal fears that we all have, of what goes bump in the night?
Yes, Glenn. That's a very interesting question. In fact, it was the key inspiration for me when I was writing Fear of the Guest. I thought a lot about the question, why do we as human beings tell ghost stories? Assuming that ghost stories are made up, what function do they serve? Is there something specific behind the ghost stories that make them scary? Maybe they're actually more real, tangible fears that underlie these made-up creatures. So I thought maybe there are some things like innately fear of death, what happens to humans after we die, fear of the ugliness of decay, the fact that, the noble and beautiful human body decomposing is a jarring and horrifying sight. And we have fear of retribution for sins committed. I believe S.J. Huang, some of his stories actually has this theme going through. And we have the fear of the unknown, what seemingly cannot be explained by logic and science. And lastly, I was really interested in the fear of the monstrous feminine. So, we noticed that a lot of our ghost stories feature female ghosts. Why? What is it about female ghosts that make them scary, Is it a subversion of our expectations of what it is to be a woman, or a distortion of feminine traits, taken to the extreme, the long hair, red nails, red lips, etc. Yeah, that was what I was thinking when I was writing the book.
I never thought of that. That's a really good point, actually. When you think of some of the more famous ghosts in history across all cultures, whether it's the Pontianak, the Hantu, in Cantonese, Guailo is white ghost, which is it's both racist and scary. But, so in every culture there is this, I wouldn't say obsession, but certainly fascination with ghosts. I mean, S.J. Huang, what is it about Pontianaks, Hantu in Malay, particularly in this part of the world, particularly in Southeast Asia, there does seem to be a real fascination with ghosts in whatever apparition or shape they take. What is it about Asian cultures that makes us so attracted to those ghosts?
I'm just going to hazard a theory. I'm going to build on what Yihan said earlier, and I'm going to focus on Pontianaks in particular. I feel that it could be a sort of a corrective mechanism. I mean, Asian societies have unfortunately always been rather patriarchal. And I don't know, maybe this is a way of, reasserting female autonomy. Yeah. Very often Pontianak is a wronged woman. Yeah. And I feel that might be a metaphor, to hit back in cases where the female, in life was actually powerless, but in death, she comes back powerful, wreaking retribution on the wrongdoers. And it might be an exercise in imagination, but I believe that it is, in a sense, an assertion, female autonomy. And in a way, that could be why it's been so powerful in Asian societies, because, of the tradition and culture in the past and all that.
That's interesting. And of course, there are many patriarchal societies here, but also if we go back and think over time, women always are kind of the hearth of the home, in traditional times, the ones we look to for safety and security. So to flip that on its head and to make that person actually the object of your fears is, I think, taps into some very powerful emotions. And we just had a comment from A.B. Terrence, one of our regular viewers here on Facebook Live on the Money FM Facebook page. A.B. says, haven't watched a decent horror movie in ages. The last one was Halloween last year, which was a yawn. Missing shows like The Exorcist. I love the Stephen King and Dennis Wheatley for a read as well. So I think people do want a good quality scare, and it's maybe increasingly hard to find. What do you think about that?
Yihan Sim.
Yihan, when we talk about finding a good scare these days, is it getting harder? I mean, there's lots of bloody and gory movies out there, but what about the truly suspenseful ones like The Exorcist?
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, most of the times now, the psychological thriller seems to be the one that really gets us. Well, I guess when we get older, we also get more and more desensitized, and the horror genre has to be really innovative to keep up with what we have become kind of immune to. And but I think, we can always rely on the horror genre to kind of jolt us out of the boredom and the tedium and monotony that can set in our everyday lives. It gives that shot of adrenaline that helps us momentarily forget the things we'd rather not think about, like what the commenter said. So, I'm looking forward to what the horror genre has to offer us.
And Yihan, I hope people are watching on Facebook Live, because while you were talking, a shadow appeared behind you and I nearly fell out of my chair. I mean, clearly someone is walking around behind you. I don't know if that's a special effect, but if it is, well done. Because as she was talking, ladies and gentlemen, a literal shadow appeared at the window behind her. I need to change my underwear, but in the meantime, SJ, coming back to SJ. Oh, that's funny. Since I was a kid, SJ, and more so in the last 10 or 15 years, when I was a kid, obviously I grew up in England. Similar to Singapore, I think, Halloween wasn't that big a deal. I'll be very frank. If at all, it was barely celebrated. Very much an American tradition and so on. But in recent generations, it has really changed. I have watched in the 25 years I've been in Singapore, Halloween go from literally nothing. I mean, it barely registered in the 90s. You knew it was the 31st, you knew it was an event, but you didn't take much notice. Now you see kids dress up in local schools. You see Singaporean kids do trick or treating increasingly. Singaporeans do things in the evenings. I'm sure we'll see it tonight. They'll go around their housing estates, do some trick or treating, have some fun. Why do you think that's changed? And Halloween as a festival has become really popular in Singapore in the last generation or so?
Well, I mean, to be very practical, I think it's really just about the American culture seeping into Singapore. And I mean, for the kids, it's good fun. I mean, it's just another thing to, celebrate, to go out and, meet new friends, talk to people, maybe get some candies, and all that. So I don't think there's any particular reason for it. It's just maybe as society gets more affluent, we can afford better things, nicer things. We start to celebrate things that we didn't previously before, just for the fun of it, and to try something new. Yeah.
We're talking with Singaporean authors S.J. Huang, who wrote the New Singapore Horror Collection, and Yihan Sim, author of Fear of the Guest. And I'd like to put this question out to both of you. And when we look at literature in Singapore, ghost stories, we know the verbal stories that have come down over the years. But how far back does the written tradition of writing ghost stories go back in Singapore? Do you have any sense of what that historical perspective looks like? When and why it first started? SJ, maybe I'll ask you first.
Oh, okay. To be honest, I'm not an expert in this, but the furthest I can think of probably would be all the Malay folklore. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's probably where you get your Pontianaks from and all that.
Sure.
That I can't say that that's the earliest, but that's probably a good starting point if you're trying to take a look at Singapore horror, I would say.
And Yihan, have you looked into that at all?
Yeah, to be honest, as I didn't really look into the history of horror writing per se. I was more inspired, as he mentioned, by the oral tradition of passing down the very iconic ghost stories from generation to generation, such that we have this almost like a shared cultural space where almost every Singaporean would be immediately familiar with the imagery of the Pontianak or the Chinese Jiangshi, or we have stories, ghosts on Pulau Tekong, old army camps, old abandoned hospitals. So yes, there's a very strong sense of it being very much an oral tradition rather than a written tradition. And I kind of capitalized on that for my story, because it seems as if, we have a shared cultural artifact, which is our history of oral ghost storytelling.
Yeah.
Yihan, you touched on a really profound point there, actually, and it's something I've never thought of until you mentioned it, which is, of course, whatever we may feel personally about ghosts and superstitions, they are one of the few cultural touchstones, if you like, that unite all Singaporeans, aren't they? I never thought of that until you mentioned it. Whatever your race, language, background, culture, Malay, Indian, Chinese, Eurasian, they all have Pontianaks, hantu, ghosts, ghouls in their culture, passed down from generation to generation. In fact, just a while ago, for something I was writing, I went to Pulau Hantu, which literally means Ghost Island in Malay. Pulau Hantu Besar, big ghost island, and Pulau Hantu Kecil, small ghost island. And I went to both of them, and I was told by Chinese people, by Indian people, and by Malay people, do not go there. It's a haunted island. So ghosts, if nothing else, there's that spectre again. Behind her.
It's my dog.
Oh, such a freaky haunted. Just tell me one thing, Yihan. The dog is alive, right? The dog is alive.
Yes.
It's not a past dog that's coming back. Okay, good. But on that point with ghosts, Yihan, start with you. What is it when you were growing up that attracted you to the ghost story?
I guess everyone loves listening to ghost stories, right? When we were young, it's like you huddle around the campfire, and then kind of like a bonding activity, and then the girls would go like, "Oh, so scary," and the boys show their courage and guts. And yeah, I think ghost stories are very much a bonding activity. And every time someone says, I have something, I saw something, or someone told me something, and everyone immediately like draws near. There's just something about ghost stories that we all are attracted to, even though I'm very much a scaredy cat myself, and
That's interesting.
I don't like to be scared. When I watch a horror movie afterwards, I have to shower with one eye open. I actually imagine the ghost jumping out at me. So yeah, it's really interesting that we are scared, but at the same time attracted to it.
Yeah, we're talking with Yihan Sim, author of Fear of the Guest, and S.J. Huang, author of the new Singapore horror collection. S.J., I got to ask you, what are you doing for Halloween this year? Do you go out and scare yourself or try to scare other people?
Well, to be honest, I don't really celebrate Halloween. I think it's great fun for the kids, but no, not quite for me.
Not your thing.
I'm just grateful that, yeah.
Yihan could just scare people with that dog. The shadow of that dog is terrifying all of our viewers on Facebook Live. It's absolutely wonderful. Okay, I mean, just very briefly, Yihan first and then SJ, maybe just give us a little flavour of what your book is about. Perfect reading for the Halloween season. Yihan first, what is your book about?
Sure. So I've got it here. It's called Fear of the Guest. If you are a hardcore horror genre fan, I have to say I would probably disappoint you, because it's not technically a scary, spine-chilling sort of book like The Exorcist, because the story is told from the perspectives of the ghost. So I think you can imagine why it would not then be scary. But the protagonists comprise, the posse of familiar Singaporean and Southeast Asian ghosts that we all talked about earlier. And so I hope that the novel would be immediately relevant to all Singaporeans. And, I hope to be funny and smart and, just a breezy short read that hopefully makes you laugh and then makes you think. Yeah.
And SJ?
Well, this here's my book. It's a collection of short stories. And, I think first and foremost, I hope that they'll be entertaining. And I also hope to explore some of the common fears that we might have. So, the fear that your new house is haunted, yeah, or the fear of your old misdeeds coming back to haunt you. So, yeah, that's my
Well, if that's the case, we might be in a little bit of trouble, Neil.
Yes.
The old misdeeds coming back to us.
Yes, I just won't be able to sleep tonight because of that dog. It keeps going and backwards and forwards. And it's fine. It's healthy, the dog. Yes, it's not a dog from 25 years ago. It's alive and well. Yes, that's the most
Or is it?
Or is it? Yeah, well.
My word for it.
The Halloween dog. I love it.
Well, we want to thank you both for joining us today. It's no better day than today to have a little tale of a ghost story or two. And we encourage everybody, of course, to check out Yihan Sim's book, Fear of the Guest, and S.J. Huang's book, The New Singapore Horror Collection. Thanks for being with us today on Weekend Mornings.
Thanks for
Thanks for having us.